What's going on, everyone? My name is Dane, and I am an addict. A mountain biking addict. And I'm just finding this out at the age of 36 years old, and I'm not having a midlife crisis, but I am getting a new addiction, a new hobby, and that's mountain biking. And that's why we're sitting here in front of my new hardtail mountain bike. And I say new, I did buy it used off of a guy on Facebook Marketplace just a couple weeks ago. And what you're looking at is a giant Talon 29er 2, and this is the 2020 version of this bike. There is the 2021s that are already out right now, so all the giant bikes and all the new models already have been out. So this one was owned by a guy. He only took it out on the trails twice. Besides that, he was actually using it out on the streets. He actually had street tires on this bike when he gave it to me, and I do have the original tires that came on this bike, the OEMs, back on. I shouldn't even say OEM since they're not Giant's tires specifically, but the tires that did come on the bike are back on it. And he said he had only had 2 trips out on the trails where he used these tires. So I got these tires with essentially 30 miles of use put on them. So that's pretty nice. But overall, I just wanted to go over the different components, the different parts of this bike. I'm no expert. I'm actually going to be reading off of a spec sheet from the Giant website as I go over this. So I'm no expert. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but again, I am an addict. At least I think I am, and I think the first step's admitting that. But let's go over just what this bike's all about and just my experience in the first couple weeks of getting into mountain biking and the adventures to come. And I can't wait to bring you guys along and show you my learning, my progression, and just the overall fun you can have while mountain biking. So let's dive into the bike. All right, so we're sitting here in front of our giant Talon 29er 2 2020, and that's a mouthful. And the reason being is they do have the giant Talon 2, that's the 27.5-inch tire. I went with the 29-inch, and I don't have a strong reasoning behind it besides my first trip out on the mountain biking trails less than 2 months ago. I was able to rent a giant 29er bike. It wasn't this exact bike, it was a full suspension, and I did really enjoy that bike. And it was just, I don't know, it's one of those things. You go buy yourself a red car and all of a sudden you see the red cars everywhere. Well, I started seeing giant bikes everywhere, and I'm not an avid mountain biker by any means, but I have obviously been able to start spotting different bikes and paying a little bit more attention now that I'm getting into the sport. And I have seen Giants around quite a bit. So I know it's a good name. I know it's one of the ones that you find at a lot of the bike shops. And it's the bike I ended up deciding to go with. The same setup of this bike is actually, you can find it on the Specialized site. They have a bike that's very comparable to this, or comparable. And the same thing with Trek, the Trek Marlin series. I know the Marlin 5, 6, and 7 are probably all going to be very comparable to this bike. I actually have a buddy in the process of getting a Marlin 7, so I don't think you can really go wrong between the three. It's just finding out which one's going to work for you. Or maybe right now in 2020, well, as we approach the end of 2020, you might just go with the bike that you can find, because bikes are a commodity right now when everyone's kind of being restricted from going into buildings and restaurants and things like that, and just having to get outdoors to get that exercise. So figure out which bike you like and go with it. But I'm not here to steer you in any one direction or another. I'm just here to talk to you guys about this bike. And it's the bike I picked up. It's an entry-level hardtail bike, so an entry-level trail slash mountain biking bike. I know it's more pitched as an XC, so a trail bike, but I'm using this out at Alafaya here in Florida, which is out in a town called Waimama. So that's where I've been taking this, and it's actually one of the best mountain biking spots in Florida, so I've been told. The other one being Santos, which is in the Ocala area. But from the get-go, I've already been taking this bike out on the trail a couple times out to Alafaya. And what we have component-wise on this bike, and again, I'm gonna just say I am no expert with bike parts. I am learning, I am watching my other YouTube videos, I'm just going on the internet, reading forums, and just getting to know my bike, because that's how I am with anything I do. I just want to learn my products, know what I'm riding, and always know what that perfect balance is of buying something cheap versus expensive, and where you're really getting your money's worth. And the one thing I just want to start out saying with this hardtail bike, I paid $560 for this bike used, and I know in 2020 it retailed for $750, and now this version of the bike in 2021 is actually $550. I want to say it's around $550. So when I compare last year's, which is this one, to this year's model, last year's model actually came with a few components that were slightly better than the newer one. So that explains that difference in the $200 price point difference there. But the only thing not stock on this bike that you're looking at right this second, that if you go buy this bike, the only thing not stock on here is the pedals. So let me change the angle here so we can get just a focus on the bike and not as much me. All right, so we're back. We're staring at the bike here. We've got this in full frame so you guys can actually focus on the bike and the parts that I'm just gonna point out. Again, the only thing not stock on this bike since I purchased it used, and I know this bike was not abused used, but it's the pedals. These are metal platform style pedals. They are Giant and they're $40, $50 pedals if you go buy them direct from Giant. The ones that come stock on this, from my understanding, is they're more plastic pedals. The same design, same look, but they're plastic. They're not metal. Outside of that, everything you see here right now is what comes on this bike, from the seat to the grips to the levers to the crank, all of it. And again, I'm no expert on mountain biking, so if I call out something wrong here, I'll probably correct it in some of the notes, or one of you guys I'm sure will correct me, because there's a lot of other experts out there. But overall, the components on this bike are perfect for just getting into it, and again, being entry level. I know with this, I know I didn't want to spend more than, say, $700 on a bike, maybe $800. So I wanted to be between that $500 and $800 range and just see how much I could push my budget for the bike I was able to get. And again, I found this one used. So getting a bike within a year old, spending a little bit less, a couple $100 less than what it came retail, I thought was a good deal, especially when it's just hard to go find a bike right this very second. I've got a buddy whose wife, and I don't think I'm ruining this because when I'll put this video out, pre-ordered a, or not pre-ordered, but ordered a Marlin 7 from the Trek store for my buddy, and it's about a month delay to get that bike, and that's assuming the bike comes in as told to them by Trek. So we'll see if it actually comes in on time. I'll keep you guys posted on that, but it'll be neat to see him getting a 29er in the Marlin 7 and be able to directly compare it to my Giant Talon 2, the 29er here. And again, the only reason I went with a 29er is that's the very first mountain bike I tested out, and it was full suspension. I feel like I could maybe enjoy the 27.5 inch a little bit better, as I sit so high up off the ground on this, and my height, I'm about 5'9", 5'10". So I did get a medium frame on this bike, so you're staring at a medium frame. They actually put a sticker right here. It does say M for medium, so that's just your indicator. That's the way you can figure that out. It also, you know, the other main component on this bike. So the main components on this bike I want to talk about, because I think they're what people pay attention to the most when they're picking out their bikes. That's my opinion. Would be the fork, and then your crank setup, along with the shifters and the derailleur. You know, those are really a lot of the core components on these bikes, and the fork could be half the cost of somebody's bike. So this bike comes with an actual coil fork. So I do have that spring inside here. I've got the coil, and this is a RockShox XC30. So it does have preload adjust in there. It also has the lockout. So this little lever right here, when I turn this, out of your jacks. I'm trying to do a video, man. Hey, you like this bike too? Guess he likes the bike just as much as me. Yeah, get in there. You smell some of that dirt? Yeah, it's from Alafaya. Hey, Scat, I'm trying to go make a video here, buddy. Man, my phone's going off, the dog's here. Oh, we got a football game starting, folks. But what it means is I can turn this clockwise to its furthest point, and it's going to make it so there's not as much rebound that's happening here, or I shouldn't even say rebound, compression that's happening within the fork. And this is a 100mm travel fork. So what happens is if I were to hit a rock, a stump, or something where the spring is needed, this lockout will pop loose and it'll allow the full coil to actually do its compression. So that's what a lockout is for. It's so if you're starting to go up a hill or you're on flat like pavement terrain, you can just pedal a lot easier and you're not going to have the bike bouncing around as much. And that's any bike with a suspension, not just mountain biking. So that's one thing I do understand. But getting to understand the quality of these forks and, you know, air versus coil, that's something I'm going to really get to mess around with. I do have I've got an electric bike. It's more of a cruiser. It's a Super 73, and I got some of those videos on this channel as well. But that bike actually comes with an air suspension, but it's the exact same 100mm travel. So I've had the chance to actually experience both, and I will say I have no issues or no problems so far with the coil. And obviously I've put a lot more abuse on this coil spring, going and hitting rocks and stumps and trees and hitting some jumps that I have not done on the e-bike. And the e-bike, you know, the air suspension's nice, but again, the coil, it's working great for me. Again, I'm 5'9", I'm around 5'10", so right in between there, and I'm 170 to 180 pounds is what I'm going to say my weight is, because I'm usually carrying a water pack, hydration pack, some tools and things like that, my clothes, I'm getting sweaty, so I always like to add about 5-10 pounds onto the numbers I'm throwing out there. So let's go over some more of these components. It is an aluminum frame. We have our aftermarket pedals that are still giant, so they're the metal pedals. It is so in terms of our gears, we do have the 2 up front and we have 9 in the back. So it's a 2x9, and a lot of mountain bikers have the single speed up front. I would like to go to the single. It's something I'm not sure I'm going to actually do that on this bike or not. I've heard that you can actually get the single, like a 32, 36 tooth. Then you could actually get some spacers in here and keep the 9 cassette in the back and not have to change your derailleur. So that's something I might consider, and I might be able to get away with for like $50, but I don't want to put a lot of money into this bike. I want to enjoy this, run it into the ground, end up with it as a second bike or a crashed bike, and then upgrade to another bike. What I would like to do is get rid of this front shifter here, this front derailleur. And speaking of the derailleurs, those are Shimano Alivio, so that's the brand of both my derailleur in the front, my derailleur in the back here. That actually, it says Alivio right on it, so there's no way to really mistake that. I could be wrong here. The step up from that might be the Derailleur, or there might be one more above the Alivio. Our shifters are the Shimano Acera. So that's what we have for our shifters. So these are Tektro brakes, which are the HD M275s. I believe my e-bike actually runs E350s, which is more for the e-bike. But overall, the brakes are okay. That's probably one thing that I've noticed would be an upgrade on a bike like this, or when I change bikes, I'm sure the brakes will get slightly better that I go with. But overall, they work for what I'm working with. I've got about 20-foot max drops or descents, maybe 25 feet that I'm hitting at Alafaya. So far the brakes have been good, and that's a combination of your tires too, your tires and your brakes, and how much skidding and everything. So let's move on to that. So we do have Maxis or Maxis, I don't know how you even say it, Icon tires. They're 29-inch tires, but they are 2.2 for the width. And the rims on this bike, they're Giants brand. These are alloy double wall 21mm rims, and there's, I'm not gonna say there's a science to it, but there is some math that will only allow me to go to a certain width of a tire based on that 21mm wide rim that I have. And I'll throw a chart up on the screen. I'm not sure how accurate this chart is, but they say you really want to stay for the max size allowed on one of these rims, you want to stay about a millimeter less than that. So the max on this one, it's 2.3, and they come with 2.2, so it seems like maybe Giant knows that. But I did just order some new tires, so one of my next videos will actually be putting some Vittoria Barzo on the front and a Mezcal tire on the back, because as of right now, the one thing that I have noticed when I'm out on the trails, and I'm still so new to this, it could just be something that's going to happen on all tires, but I do feel like my grip could be a little bit better on a lot of this soft and hard packed dirt that, you know, when it's not raining out here, it's very dry out in Florida. Yes, it's humid, but the ground's still often dry. So there's just a lot of loose dirt and dust on top of the ground here, and I just tend to feel like I'm sliding around quite a bit when I'm going around turns or having to do my braking. So again, I'm not sure if that's the braking or that's the tires, but the tires I'm going to be putting on are 2.25, so I'm pushing that limit of going within that 1 millimeter on the tire width. It is a Shimano crank that's on here. I'll throw the model up on the screen. I don't think it's worth mentioning which version it is. It's not one of the high ends, but hey, it works. And then for the actual cassette in the back, I already told you guys that it's a 9-speed in the back. And then the chain, which is slightly rusted. Again, I bought this used, but it's a KMC9 chain. So from my understanding, those are decent chains. Probably the one next thing I'm going to get for this bike. I do plan to switch out the tires, as I mentioned to you, swap out this chain just so I've got a cleaner chain. And then outside of that, I will probably just be changing the actual grips. The grips aren't bad. I do wear gloves when I'm riding, but I want something a little bit thicker. I do have a bad left wrist, so anything I can do that's going to help out with that, and any comments or feedback you guys might want to give me on things that I could be doing that's going to help my wrist while I'm riding, besides just wearing like a neoprene brace, I would love to get that feedback. The handlebar width on this bike, it comes with a 780 millimeter wide bar, and I know a lot of mountain bikers like the handlebars wider, and they say not to really go less than about 760. That's personal preference, but I am thinking of maybe going to a 760 wide and just getting a feel for it. And I do plan to get some wolf tooth grips, just as it's that thicker foam. Will give me a little bit more cushion, so I'm not squeezing them as hard, or if I am, I'm still not feeling that up my arm. But I'm excited. It does not have the dropper post seat. I know that's something that a lot of mountain bikers like. So that's probably my biggest negative, because obviously you want to have that a little bit lower when you're hitting jumps and doing things, and then when you need to sit and do some climbs, you want to have it raised. And there's not an easy way to adjust your seat mid-ride unless you got that dropper post seat. But again, I'm not going to do that until I get a better bike. I don't think that's something I want to go spend $150, $200 on a dropper post seat on a bike that I've already spent $560 on. Last things last, spokes. So the spokes on these rims, they're 14 gauge. I know I'm jumping around here. You got the Schrader valves, always carry an extra replacement tube. I am not tubeless on this bike. These Maxis, you can, or Maxis, I want to say Maxis, I don't know about Maxis, but you can run these tubeless. You just have to convert them over. I wanted to try out the tubes in the tires because, well, I'm new to mountain biking. The bike I demoed that first day was tubeless, and I loved the squishy feel of those tires. I thought that was actually awesome. And I know that's because of the tubeless, but with the tubes, I was running them like around 22, 23 PSI out there, and I have not had a puncture yet. So I've done about, I want to say, about probably 50 miles on mountain biking on some pretty rough terrain, and the tubes have held up well. I'm starting to now carry one around with me just in case, but up to this point, it's worked well. Hopefully I don't jinx myself by putting on some new tires with some different tread, and all of a sudden I've opened up the gates for getting punctures. So more to come on that. I think if I start to experience a lot of punctures, then I'll definitely go try out the tubeless. But for now, on this bike, I'm just going to stick to the tubes, and I'm going to ride the hell out of this bike. And so let's do a quick recap on my mountain biking experience so far. Okay, so I know I told you guys I've only been doing this now for less than 2 months. So what's that 2 months been like? How is it I got so addicted so quickly? Well, I think it's because I have an addictive personality, probably like a lot of people out there. I had a buddy, he said, "Hey Dane, you want to go hit the trails? I'm gonna go to a place called Alafaya." Hadn't even heard of it. I said, sure, why not? Not realizing it's a very technical course. It's great for, I'd say, all ages and all levels of experience, just because they got the greens, the blues, the blacks, and the double black diamonds. So you got your selection of all the trails you could use. But we go out, we both demoed some bikes. It was $55 each for 3 hours a time, which that's about my max right now, is 3 hours. But we got the bikes. We I ended up with the giant bike, as I mentioned to you. Again, I think that was the Trance, and it was a 29er. It was just amazing to have a dual suspension or a full suspension bike. I had never ridden a bike like that, so I got very spoiled with the sponginess of just having that suspension on the front and back. And also having those tubeless tires. It was just so weird riding on that low pressure. But either way, I had a blast that day. There was no major accidents or anything. I got the pedals to hit me in the shin once at the very end on my very last drop on a trail called the Bridges, which was the first black diamond that I actually did in mountain biking. And of course, it was the last trail of the day, which is when a lot of your energy is normally gone. So actually, something I'm learning is you almost want to hit some of that harder stuff in the beginning and just do it while you know you got the energy and the focus there. But besides that, we had a great time. So the next weekend, we were going to visit some family, and I live about an hour from that Alafaya Park, which is not bad at all to get to some great trails. An hour, I can do that all day long, that drive. Well, the next weekend, we were going to go visit some family that lives about 20 minutes from there, and I thought I should bring my e-bike, my Super 73. So I took the Super 73. It has front suspension. It's a hardtail also, but it's fat tire bike, so it's got 4.5-inch wide tires on the back. Well, I said, you know what, I could take this and hit those green trails. Now that I had been there, I'd seen the greens and experienced those, I knew that bike could handle it. So I took that bike out, had a blast again. I only spent like an hour and a half out that day. I just wanted to get some quick riding in, go out to that park again because I enjoyed it so much. So I went out, I enjoyed it. That's when I started looking on Facebook Marketplace. Quickly find a bike, commit to buying it from this guy. I go and I pick it up from him the next weekend on a Friday morning. I meet him. He's out in like the South Tampa Riverview area, which is close to Alafaya. So I go, give him the money for the bike. The bike was in rideable good condition, and I wanted to just try it out. So I took it straight out to the trails. My buddy met me out there again. He went and rented a bike. I started using this bike, and again, had a blast, no issues, bike held up well. Fast forward to the next weekend. I go again, this time by myself. So now 4 weekends in a row, 4th trip out, 2nd trip on my own bike meant for it. And again, I had a great time. Met a cool guy out there, and that's what I'm going to say. So far, I've loved the mountain biking community as well. Everybody out there is just so helpful. They're willing to just tell you what you need to know. You can ask most people questions. I'm sure there's some assholes out there, but regardless, I have only met some awesome people. So on that last time out there, I met a guy. He wanted to show me around. I ended up doing a double black diamond. So now I've done some blacks. I've done the blues, greens, and I'm enjoying it. And I know those levels of skill is going to be different on every trail you go to and every state you go to. But here in Florida, I will say I feel like they're pretty technical and pretty intense, our blacks and double black diamonds at Alafaya. And so I've been on quite a few of those now, and I got some footage on them, so I'll bring that to you guys. I've now had one good crash, and it was that last one out there. It wasn't on that double black. It's actually that first one, Bridges, the one that I said I'd hit my shin on. Well, I guess now I've had 2 accidents on Bridges, so that's my kryptonite trail or path right there. And then the 5th weekend. So I was able to make it 5 full weekends in a row when I made it out to a trail. Well, come to find out, some of my buddies from college who are more down south, further from Alafaya, they're into some like gravel biking where they're just doing more long distance and speed, but a few of them recently had picked up some fat tire bikes, and they've been hitting some trails out in their neck of the woods. So they invited me down to Caloosahatchee State Park, not Regional Park, Caloosahatchee State Park? I think I'm switching them around. I think it's Caloosahatchee Regional Park. That's right, because it's ran by the county there. Alafaya is the state park, but Caloosahatchee Regional Park, CRP. So I went out there, rode with 4 of my buddies down there, and that was neat. The trails were definitely not as technical as Alafaya, but still, the point of that was just to let you know this crash course, and I don't know if that's a crash course, but getting out at least once every week, pushing myself to the limit, realizing how much water I'm not drinking the day before or the week before, and just getting out there and having a blast, and I'm loving it. And it's a great way to get some exercise. You stay so alert. Well, you have to stay alert mentally. You have to be ready physically. So that's what I love about this. You know, you go out thinking it's mostly going to be a physical workout, but you neglect or you don't really think about that until you get out and you start mountain biking, how much of a mental game it is as well, because you always need to be looking ahead. You're not really focusing on what's in front of you. You're always looking ahead and thinking what your body needs to do to react with your bike and your body as you come across or come up to your next obstacle. So that's what I love about it. It just, by the time you finish, your entire body and brain is exhausted, and I love that. And it's just a thrill. There's definitely adrenaline that comes with this, and feats that you're going to come up to that you probably second guess or question or not really sure if that's something you can handle. And when you get to it, well, I guess you're just going to find out. And that's why I think the more you do this, the more you just train yourself, and the more what some of these bigger obstacles look like don't become so big anymore. But I've quickly learned that you just need to keep the momentum going when you're out there and not overthink anything. Just hit it. Just have enough momentum going that you're always having to think, what's the next after this one? What's the next part that I'm going to get to? But I don't have any other tips. This is just my experience, and I wanted to show you guys the bike I'm using, and it's to document this for myself. It's to document it for you guys in case anyone out there might be happening to look at this exact same bike. I hope you find this video and you find some use out of it. You can also get this 2020 Talon 29er 2 in an orange color. You don't have to get it in the gray if you're out there looking for it. If you want to get one of the other Talons, there's a couple other. We have like a regular Talon, and I think there's a 3, 4. There's a couple other different levels of the Talon. I think it only goes to 3, but there's like there's 3 or 4 different versions of it. But I hope this was useful, helpful to you guys, and I hope it just helped you guys get to know me as I progress down the mountain biking, thrill riding path. And I look forward to either bringing this bike or just hitting some trails and renting other bikes that are out there in some of these other states and just seeing what else is out there. I've been loving watching other people's videos online and just watching everyone shred it out there. So, peace out, everyone. Hope you guys liked staring at my giant Talon bike here while I talked, and hope to see you guys out on the trail. Rock on.